earlier we talked about inflammation, the inflammation response as it is a function of the diet. How about taking or not necessarily supplements, but medicines such as ibuprofen and other anti-inflammatory agents? What's your thought on that?
Well, there's no short list of anti-inflammatory substances that are available either over the counter, such as drugs like Aleve, ibuprofen, aspirin, or stronger variants of those that are by prescription only. Celebrex is a great example of those. These drugs all basically try to do the same thing, which is block different metabolic pathways that lead to the production of arachidonic acid or other things called eicosanoids that lead to an inflamed response, or at least exacerbate an inflammatory response. Okay, so the question is, what role do these play in your training or competing? Well, the first thing to keep in mind is everybody has a different response to these medications. So one thing I never advocate doing is experimenting during competition. So anything you're going to figure out, you want to figure out during training. Second thing to keep in mind is, as a result of people having different responses to these medications, some people have really bad responses to them. So I hate to say this, but I need to say this. You've got to check with your doctor before you try any of these medications. I know from personal experience that ibuprofen works really well for me. There is a risk that if you take too much ibuprofen, you can bleed from your stomach. I've been fortunate that I can eat as much of this stuff as I want, and it doesn't seem to harm me. So what I've noticed is in the last week of training, leading up to a really long swim, anything that's probably going to be over 6 to 8 hours, I find that taking ibuprofen at the maximum dose, which is about 2,400 milligrams a day, I divide it into 3 doses, so 800 milligrams every 8 hours. I'll take that for a week leading up to a long swim to sort of raise tissue levels of ibuprofen. Now, is there any evidence to support that? I haven't found any, but it certainly feels good.
So tell us, when you say it feels good, what is that actually doing? What's the effect that, again, it's a hypothesis, it's theoretical, as you said.
It just means I hurt a little bit less. And I think anybody who's woke up with a sore back or an aching shoulder can attest to the value of taking that ibuprofen for an immediate response. What I'm talking about is almost prophylactic, especially if we're talking to a group of athletes who put themselves through some pretty Herculean tasks. I do find that on the day of the big event, if I can go in there knowing that for 5 to 7 days leading up to it, I've taken a full dose of ibuprofen each day, and then during that swim, maybe at the 6-hour mark, I take a liquid form of it with one of my feedings, it just seems to make it all better.
In a very preventative sense, and I think, as you said, and wisely so, you've got to make sure you check with your medical professional and know exactly what the response is, because we're all going to respond differently.
Yeah, and you have to make sure that this sits well with your stomach. I have friends, for example, who I've been on swims with who really like Aleve, and they prefer it in that capsule form, and I would have to mix Aleve, crush it and mix it into their drinks. Everybody's got to figure out what works for them.
Sounds really interesting. Thank you.